Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here. Well, here we are, the penultimate episode of Star Trek Discovery. It's hard to believe that after this there's only one episode left before Discovery joins the ranks of all of the Star Trek shows that have ended before it. Before we get there, however, we do have to talk about Season 5, Episode 9, Lagrange Point. As always, beware of spoilers. At the top of the episode, I have to express my utter glee and relief that Saru is actually in this one. I was beginning to worry that we wouldn't see him until the final episode, which would frankly have been criminal. Thankfully, we do see him here, returning from his diplomatic mission to find Federation HQ on high alert thanks to the situation with the Breen. However, still no Detmer and a Woshikun, which is annoying. Quick note with regards to this scene, did Tarina replace her previous aide after the debacle with Saru in Janal? This guy is definitely different. I think it would be funny if there was a throwaway line about the previous guy having been fired. Meanwhile, back on Discovery, repairs have been made thanks to some help from Book. Don't they have a crew aboard this ship? Anyway, Stamets jumps Discovery to the final set of coordinates. The tech is located in the Lagrange Point between two singularities, a place of gravitational equilibrium between the two bodies. I'm definitely detecting the hand of science advisor Dr. Aaron McDonald in this one. While they do beat the Breen there, too much talking and too little action means that the Breen get their hands on the vessel containing the progenitor's tech first. The mission now becomes one of infiltration. Get aboard the Breen vessel and make off with the tech. I enjoy a good heist story, and Burnham's 11 makes for a fun premise. I like the way Adira steps up and volunteers to be a part of the team. Paul's paternal instincts were good to see as well, and I'm glad that when it becomes apparent that Adira is going on the mission, he expresses concern but doesn't outright object, showing everyone, including Adira, the faith he has in them. After some tense moments getting through the shields in a shuttlecraft via an active exhaust port, in which Adira says the temperature is 3,000 degrees Kelvin instead of the proper units of 3,000 kelvins, tisk tisk, the two teams get aboard the massive Breen vessel, with Book and Burnham heading to the shuttle bay and Adira and Reese going to the bridge to take the shields down. There are some fun moments with the translation units not keeping up, requiring the boarding party to keep on their toes, as well as one particularly awkward moment of Book distracting a Breen scientist by flirting with him. A nice bit of levity in an otherwise tense episode. I do, however, want to call out one moment that bugged me a bit. While Book and Burnham are making their way to the shuttle bay, Burnham chooses this moment to pull Book aside and discuss their relationship. Now, I know the deep conversation in the middle of a tense moment is a Star Trek trope, but this one felt particularly egregious, even though Burnham hangs a lantern on it by saying, "Now's not an ideal time," but yeah, no kidding. In the Breen shuttle bay, Mole and her soldiers attempt to analyze the progenitor tech. They manage to open the container using the key that's made up of the previous clues, but when a Breen is sucked into the void that is revealed, they realize that it's not going to be quite that simple. I loved the attempt with one soldier tethered to the deck. It reminded me of this scene from an episode of Stargate SG-1, a flashback to an early attempt to send an explorer through the Stargate with a lifeline that didn't work for obvious reasons. On the bridge of the Breen vessel, Reese and Adira muscle their way into commandeering a console. The way they bully the ensign away from his console made me think of the poor Breen lower deckers. Star Trek Lower Decks should definitely explore a storyline dealing with them. Adira manages to hack into the shields, and Burnham and Book make their way into the shuttle bay to tag the progenitor tech with a transpo lock so that Discovery can beam it aboard. Of course, they are discovered, and Mole is about to head down to deal with them when Raynor, in command of Discovery, realizes he needs to distract her. As usual, I love Raynor in this episode. His interaction with Tilly when she prods him about not sitting in the captain's chair is great, and he reminds me of Jellicoe and Shaw in all the best ways. I really enjoyed every moment of Callum Keith Rennie here, including the triumphant moment at the end of the episode when he finally takes the chair. He definitely earned it with the maneuver to take down the containment field on the Breen shuttle bay. That whole sequence was visually stunning, and I loved the multiple perspectives on the scene, from inside the shuttle bay with Discovery bearing down on them, and the perspective of the Discovery crew as they make this daring charge. The result of all of this is that both Burnham and Maul, along with the previous Breen soldiers, are inside the progenitor tech, encased in an extra-dimensional portal. We'll have to wait until next week's finale to see exactly what that looks like. While Discovery is dealing with Maul and her Breen lackeys, Starfleet has been tasked with intercepting another Breen Primarch, the previously mentioned Tahal, who hopes to integrate Rune's troops into her own forces. Rather than send the Mitchell with its pathway drive, they instead opt to send a shuttle equipped with the same propulsion technology, and Saru volunteers to undertake that particular mission. After a lovely, heartfelt goodbye between him and his fiancée, President Tarina, Saru takes off, presumably in a storyline that's picked up in the final episode. This week's episode was a very strong lead into the much-anticipated series finale next week. I loved the action aspects, the character bits, and I'm particularly curious to see how Saru's mission ends up as well. There's a lot to wrap up in the final episode, and as usual, I'm really eager to see how they manage it, while still really not wanting this series to end. As far as Easter eggs and references this week, there were very few that I could find. Beyond the Breen themselves and the use of duranium in the shell that contains the progenitor tech, as well as a few small references already covered in previous episodes, like the namesake of the USS Mitchell, I kind of came up empty. I think this actually speaks well of this episode, relying more on Discovery's own internal lore and original ideas rather than a series of references to past Star Trek. Well done overall with this episode. And that's it for my thoughts on Lagrange Point. What did you think of the episode, and what are your predictions for the series finale? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, as always, to the Patreon supporters for your help with these videos, and thanks especially to you, the viewer, for watching every week. I'm very much looking forward to seeing you all in next week's review of the final episode of Star Trek Discovery. Until then, as always, live long and prosper.